I'm back. And maybe living under a new name. He would know how to obtain such papers, even though he's not a member of any family, not of the Fratellanza. Yes, sir. The background is such that he would know, and you believe he would have obtained these papers in either Los Angeles or here. Dante Rania said, gesturing toward the window in the city of San Francisco with one soft pink hand. Even said, on August 25th, he went on the run, starting from Santa Barbara by car because for various reasons, he couldn't take a plane anywhere. I believe he would have wanted a new identity as quickly as he could get it. At first, I assumed he'd go south and seek out counterfeit ID in Los Angeles because that was the closest. But I spent the better part of 2 months talking with all the right people in LA, Orange County, and even San Diego. All the people to whom this man could have gone for high quality false ID. And I've had a few leads, but none panned out. So if he didn't go south from Santa Barbara, he came north. And the only place in the north where he could get the kind of quality papers he would want is in our fair city, Dante Rania said. Gesturing again toward the window and smiling at the populous slopes below. Vince supposed that the idea that the Vince supposed that the Don was smiling fondly at his beloved San Francisco, but the smile didn't look fond. It looked avaricious. And Dante Rania said, you would like for me to give you the names of the people who would have my authorization to deal in papers such as this man needed? Such as this man needed. If you can see it in your heart to grant me this favor, I will be most grateful. They won't have kept records, yes sir, but they might remember something. They're in the business of not remembering, but the human mind never forgets, Dante Rania said. No matter how hard it tries, it never really forgets. How true. And you swear that the man you seek is not a member of any family. I swear it. This execution must not in any way be traced to my family. I swear it. Dante Rania closed his eyes again, but not for as long as he had closed them before. When he opened them, he smiled broadly, but as always, it was a humorless smile. He was the least jolly fat man Vince had ever seen. When your father married a Swedish girl rather than one of his own people, his family despaired and expected the worst. But your mother was a good wife, unquestioning and obedient, and it produced you, most handsome son. But you're more than handsome. You're a good soldier, Vincent. You have done fine, clean work for the families in New York and New Jersey, for those in Chicago, and also for us on this coast. Not very long ago, you did me the great service of crushing the cockroach Patangela, for which you paid me most generously, Dante Rania. The screwdriver waved one hand dismissively. We're all paid for our labors, but we're not talking money here. Your years of loyalty and good service are worth more than money. Therefore, you are owed at least this one favor. Thank you, Dante Rania. You will be given the names of those who provide such papers in the city, and I'll see that they are all forewarned of your visit. They'll cooperate fully. If you say they will, Vince said, rising and bowing with only his head and shoulders. I know that it is true. The Don motioned him to sit down, But before you attend this private affair, I'd like you to take another contract. There's a man in Oakland who is giving me much grief. He thinks I can't touch him his because he's politically well connected and well guarded. His name is Ramon Velasquez. This will be a difficult job, Vincent. Vince carefully concealed his frustration and displeasure. He did not want to take on a trouble hit right now. He wanted to concentrate on tracking down Travis Cornell and the dog, but he knew Ted Ryan's contract was more a demand than an offer. To get the names of the people who sold false papers, he must first waste Velasquez. He said, "I will be honored to squash any insect that has stung you, and there will be no charge this time. Oh, I'd insist on paying you, Vincent, as ingratiating as ingratiatingly as he knew how." Vince smiled and said, "Please, Dante Rania, let me do this favor. It would give me great pleasure." Ted Rania appeared to consider the request, though this was what he expected, a free hit in return for helping Vince. He put both hands on his enormous belly and patted himself. "I am such a lucky man. Wherever I turn, people want to do me favors and kindnesses." "Not lucky, don't run," Vince said. Sake of their mannered conversation, "You reap what you sow, and if you reap kindness, it is because of the seeds of greater kindness you've sown so broadly." Beaming, said Rania accepted his offer to waste Velasquez for nothing. The nostrils of his porcine nose flared as if he had smelled something good to eat, and he said, "But now you tell me, to satisfy my curiosity, what will you do to this other man when you catch him? This man with whom you have a personal vendetta?" "Blow his brains out and snatch his dog," Vince thought. But he knew that kind of crap the screwdriver wanted to hear. The same hard-ass stuff most of these guys wanted to hear from him. Their favorite hired killer. So he said, "Dante Rania, I intend to cut off his balls, cut off his ears, cut out his tongue, and only then put an ice pack through his heart and stop his clock." The fat man's eyes glittered with approval. His nostrils flared. These guys are evil. By Thanksgiving, the outsider had not found a bleached wood house in the Big Sur. Every night, Chavez and Nora locked the shutters over the inside of the windows. They dead-bolted the doors, retiring to the second floor. They slept with shotguns beside their bed and revolvers on their nightstands. Sometimes, in the dead hours after midnight, they were awakened by strange noises in the yard or on the porch roof. Einstein padded from window to window, sniffing urgently, but always he indicated that they had nothing to fear. On further investigation, Travis usually found a prowling raccoon or other forest creature. Travis enjoyed Thanksgiving more than he had thought he would. Given the circumstances, he and Nora cooked an elaborate traditional meal for just the three of them: roast turkey with chestnut dressing, a clam casserole, glazed carrots, baked corn, pepper slaw, croissant rolls. It's not even croissant, it's crescent rolls, and pumpkin pie. Einstein sampled everything because he had developed a much more sophisticated palate than an ordinary dog. He was still a dog, however, and though the only thing he strongly disliked was the sour pepper slaw. He preferred turkey above all else. That afternoon, he spent a lot of time gnawing contentedly on the drumsticks. Over the weeks, Travis had noticed that, like most dogs, Einstein would go out into the yard occasionally and eat a little grass, though sometimes it seemed to gag him. He did it again on Thanksgiving Day, and when Travis asked him if he liked the taste of grass, Einstein said no. Then why do you try to eat it sometimes? Need it. Why? I don't know. If you don't know what you need it for, then how do you know you need it at all? Instinct? Yes, just instinct. Don't knock it. That evening, the three of them sat in piles of pillows in the living room floor in front of the big stone fireplace, listening to music. Einstein's golden coat was glossy and thick in the firelight, as Travis sat with one arm around Nora, petting the dog with his free hand. He thought, eating grass must be a good idea because Einstein looked healthy and robust. Einstein sneezed a few times and coughed now and then, but those seemed natural reactions to the Thanksgiving overindulgence and to the warm, dry air in front of the fireplace. Travis was not for a moment concerned about the dog's health. On the afternoon of Friday, November 26th, the balmy day after Thanksgiving, Garrison Dilworth was aboard his beloved 42-foot Hinkley Sou'wester, Amazing Grace, in his boat slip in the Santa Barbara harbor. He was polishing bright work and diligently bent to his task. Almost didn't see the two men in business suits as they approached along the dock. He looked up as they were about to announce themselves, and he knew who they were, not their names, but who they must work for, even before they showed him their credentials. One was named Johnson, the other was Soames. Uh-oh. Pretending puzzlement and interest, he invited them aboard. Stepping off the dock, down onto the deck, the one named Johnson said, "We'd like to ask you a few questions, Mr. Dilworth." "What about?" Garrison inquired, wiping his hands on a white rag. Johnson was a black man of ordinary size, even a little gaunt, haggard looking, yet imposing. Garrison said, "National Security Agency, you say?" "Surely. You don't think I'm in the eye of the KGB?" Johnson smiled thinly. "You've done work for Nora Devon?" He raised his eyebrows. "Nora? Are you serious?" "Well, I can assure you that Nora isn't the sort of person to be involved." "You are her attorney, right?" "You are her attorney, then?" Johnson asked. Garrison glanced at the freckle-faced younger man, Agent Soames, and again raised his eyebrows as if to ask if Johnson was always this chilly. Soames stared expressionlessly, taking his cue from the boss. "Oh my, we're in trouble with these two," Garrison thought. After his frustrating and unsuccessful questioning of Dilworth, Lamb sent Clip Soames off on a series of errands, began the procedure to obtain a court order allowing taps to be placed on the attorney's home and office telephones, find the three payphones nearest his office and the three nearest his house, and arrange for taps to be put on those as well, obtain telephone company records of all long-distance calls made from Dilworth's home and office phones, bring in extra men from the Los Angeles office to staff and around-the-clock surveillance of Dilworth, starting within 3 hours. While Cliff was attending to those things, Lamb strolled around the boat decks in the harbor, hoping the sounds of the sea and the calming sight of rolling water would help clear his mind and focus his thoughts on his problems. God knew he needed desperately to get focused. Over 6 months had passed since the dog and the outsider had escaped from Banadine, and Lamb had lost almost 15 pounds in the pursuit. He had not slept well in months, had little interest in food, and even his sex life had suffered. There's such a thing as trying too hard, he told himself. It causes constipation of the mind, but such admonishments did no good. He was still as blocked as a pipe full of concrete. For 3 months, since they found Cornell's Airstream in the school parking lot the day after Hockney's murder, Lamb had known that Cornell and the woman had been returning on that August 9th, from a trip to Vegas, Tahoe, and Monterey. Nightclub, table cards from Vegas, hotel stationery, matchbook, and gasoline credit cards with receipt had been found in the trailer and pickup truck, pinpointing every stop of their itinerary. 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 He had not known the woman's identity, yet he had assumed she was a girlfriend, nothing more. But of course, he should never have assumed any such thing. Only a few days ago, when one of his own agents went to Vegas to marry, Lem had finally realized that Cornell and the woman could have gone to Vegas for that same purpose. Suddenly, their trip had looked like a honeymoon. Within hours, he confirmed that Cornell had, in fact, been married in Clark County, Nevada on August 11th to Nora Devon of Santa Barbara. Seeking, seeking the woman, he discovered that her house had been sold 6 weeks ago after she vanished with Cornell. Looking into the sale, he found she had been represented by her attorney, Garrison Dilworth. By freezing Cornell's assets, Lem thought he had made it harder for the man to continue a fugitive existence. But now he discovered that Dilworth had helped slip 20,000 out of Cornell's bank, and that all of the proceeds from the sale of the woman's house had been transferred to her somehow. Furthermore, through Dilworth, she had closed out her local bank account 4 weeks ago, and that money also was in her hands. She and her husband and dog might now have sufficient resources to remain in hiding for years. Standing on the dock, Lamb stared at the sun-spangled sea, which slapped rhythmically against the pilings. The motion nauseated him. He looked up at the soaring, cawing seagulls. Instead of being calmed by their graceful flight, he grew edgy. Garrison Dilworth was intelligent, clever, a born fighter. Now that the link had been made between him and the Cornells, the attorney promised to take the NSA to court to unfreeze Travis's assets. You filed no charges against the man, Dilworth has said. What toting judge would grant the power to freeze his accounts? Your manipulation of the legal system to hamper an innocent citizen and and is unconscionable. Is unconscionable. Lim could have filed charges against Travis and Nora Cornell for the violation of all sorts of laws designed to preserve the national security, and by doing so, he'd have made it impossible for Dilworth to continue lending assistance to the fugitives. But filing charges meant attracting media attention. Then the harebrained story about Cornell's pet panther, and perhaps the NSA's entire cover-up would come down like a paper house in a thunderstorm. His only hope was that Dilworth would try to get in touch with the Cornells to tell them that his association with them had been at last uncovered, and that contact between them would have to be far more circumspect in the future. Then, with luck, Lamb would pinpoint the Cornells through their telephone number. He did not have much hope of everything working out that easily. Dilworth was no fool. Looking around at the Santa Barbara yacht harbor, Lamb tried to relax, for he knew he needed to be calm and fresh if he was to outthink that old attorney. The hundreds of pleasure boats on at the docks, sails furled or packed away, bobbed gently on the rolling tide, and other boats with unfurled sails glided serenely out toward the open sea, and people in bathing suits were sunning on the decks or having early cocktails, and the gulls darted like stitching needles across the blue and white quilt of the sky, and people were fishing from the stone breakwater, and the scene was achingly picturesque, but it was also an image of leisure, great and calculated leisure, with which Lem Johnson could not identify. To Lem, to Lem too much leisure was a dangerous distraction from the cold, hard realities of life, from the competitive world, and any leisure activity that lasted longer than a few hours made him nervous and anxious to get back to work. Here was leisure measured in days, in weeks. Here, in these expensive and lovingly crafted boats, was leisure measured in month-long sailing excursions up and down the coast. So much leisure that it made Lem break into a sweat, made him want to scream. He had the outsider to worry about as well. There had been there had been no sign of it since the day Travis Cornell had shot at it in his rented house back at the end of August, 3 months 3 months ago. What had the thing been doing in those 3 months? Where had it been hiding? Was it still after the dog? Was it dead? Maybe out in the wild. It had been bitten by a rattlesnake, or maybe it had fallen off a cliff. God, Lem thought, let it be dead. Please, give me that much of a break. Let it be dead. It's not dead. But he knew the outsider was not dead because that would be too easy. Nothing in life was that easy. The damn thing was out there, stalking the dog. It had probably it had probably suppressed the urge to kill people it encountered because it knew each murder drew Lem and his men closer to it, and it did not want to be found before it had killed the dog. When the beast had torn the dog and the Cornells to bloody pieces, then it would once again begin to vent its rage on the population at large, and every death would hang heavily on Lem Johnson's conscience. Meanwhile, the investigation into the murders of the Benadine scientists was dead in the water. In fact, that second NSA task force had been dismantled. Obviously, the Soviets had hired outsiders for those hits, and there was no way to find out whom they had brought in. A deeply tanned guy in white shorts and topsiders passed the Lem and said, "Beautiful day." "Like hell," Lem said. The day after Thanksgiving, Travis walked into the kitchen to get a glass of milk and saw Einstein having a sneezing fit, but he did not think much of it. Nora, even quicker than Travis to worry about the retriever's welfare, was also unconcerned. In California, the pollen count peaks in spring and autumn. However, because the climate permits a 12-month cycle of flowers, no season is pollen free. Living in the woods, the situation was exacerbated. That night, Travis was awakened by a sound he could not identify. Instantly alert, every trace of sleep vanished. He sat up in the dark and reached for the shotgun on the floor beside the bed. Holding the Mossberg, he listened for the noise, and in a minute or so, it came again. In the second floor hallway, he eased out of bed without waking Nora and went cautiously to the doorway. The hall, like most places in the house, was equipped with a low wattage nightlight, and in the pale glow, Travis saw that the noise came from the dog. Einstein was standing near the head of the stairs, coughing and shaking his head. Travis went to him, and the retriever looked up. "You okay?" A quick tap of the tail. "Yes." He stopped. He stooped and ruffled the dog's coat. "You sure?" "Yes." For a minute, the dog pressed against him, enjoying being petted. Then he turned away from Travis, coughed a couple of times, and went downstairs. Travis followed. In the kitchen, he found Einstein slipping water from the dish. Having emptied the dish, the retriever went to the pantry, turned on the light, and began to paw leather tiles out of the lucite tubes. "Thirsty?" "Are you sure you feel well?" "Fine, just thirsty. Nightmare woke me." Surprised, Travis said, "You dream, don't you?" "Yeah, too much." He refilled the retriever's water dish, and Einstein emptied it again, and Travis filled it a second time. By then, the dog had had enough. Travis expected him to want to go outside to pee, but the dog went upstairs and settled in the hall by the door of the bedroom in which Nora still slept. In a whisper, Travis said, "Listen, if you want to come in and sleep beside the bed, it's all right." This is what Einstein wanted. He curled up on the floor on Travis's side of the bed. In the dark, Travis could reach out and easily touch both the shotgun and Einstein. He took greater reassurance from the presence of the dog than from the gun. 6. Saturday afternoon, just 2 days after Thanksgiving, Garrison Dilworth got in his Mercedes and drove slowly away from his house. Within 2 blocks, he confirmed that the NSA still had a tail on him. It was a green Ford, probably the same one that had followed him last evening. They they stayed well back of him, and they were discreet, but he was not blind. He still had not called Nora and Travis because he was being followed. He suspected Nora and Travis. He suspected his phones were being tapped as well. He could have gone to payphone, but he was afraid that the NSA could eavesdrop on a conversation with a directional microphone or some other high-tech gadget. And if they managed to record the push-button tones that he produced by punching in the Cornell's number, they would easily translate those tones into digits and trace the number back to Big Sur. He would have to resort to deception to contact Travis and Nora safely. He knew he had better act soon. Before Travis or Nora phoned him, these days, with the technology available to them, the NSA would trace the call back to its origins as fast as Garrison would be able to warn Travis that the line was tapped. So at 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon, chaperoned by the green Ford, he drove to Della Colby's house in Montecito to take her to his boat. The amazing grace for a lazy afternoon in the sun. At least that was what he had told her on the phone. Della was Judge Jack Colby's widow. She and Jack were Garrison's and Francine's best friends for 25 years before death broke up the foursome. Jack had died 1 year after Francine. Della and Garrison remained very close. They frequently went to dinner together, went dancing and walking and sailing. Initially, their relationship had been strictly platonic. They were simply old friends who had the fortune or misfortune to outlast everyone they most cared about, and they needed each other because they shared so many good times and memories that would be diminished when there was no longer anyone left with whom to reminisce. A year ago, when they suddenly found themselves in bed together, oh, Garrison. They had been surprised and overwhelmed with guilt. They felt as if they were cheating on their spouses. Though Jack and Francine had died years ago, the guilt passed, of course, and now they were grateful for the companionship and gently burning passion that had expectedly brightened their late autumn years. When he pulled into Della's driveway, she came out of the house, locked the front door, and hurried into his car. She was dressed in boat shoes, white slacks, a blue and white striped sweater, and a blue windbreaker. Although she was 69, and though her short hair was snow white, she looked 15 years younger. He got out of the Mercedes, gave her a hug and a kiss, and said, "Can we go in your car?" She blinked. "Are you having trouble with yours?" "No," he said. "I just rather take yours." "Sure." She backed her caddy out of the garage, and he got in on the passenger side. As she pulled into the street, he said, "I'm afraid my car might be bugged, and I don't want them hearing what I've got to tell you." Her expression was priceless. Laughing, he said, "No, I've not gone senile overnight. If you'll keep an eye on the rear view mirror as you drive, You'll see we're being followed. They're very good, very subtle, but they're not invisible. He gave her time, and after a few blocks, Della said, "They're green Ford, is it?" That's them. What have you got yourself into there? What have you gotten yourself into there? Don't go straight into the harbor. Drive to the farmer's market and we'll buy some fresh fruit. Then drive to a liquor store and we'll buy some wine. By then, I'll have told you everything. Have you have you some secret life I've never suspected? She asked, grinning at him. Are you a geriatric James Bond? Yesterday, Lem Johnson had reopened a temporary headquarters in a claustrophobic office at the Santa Barbara courthouse. The room had one narrow window. The walls were dark, and the overhead lighting fixture was so dim it left the corridors full of hanging shadows like misplaced scarecrows. The borrowed furniture consisted of rejects from other offices. He had worked out of here in the days following the Hawking killing, but had closed it after a week when there was nothing more to be done in the area. Now, with the hope that Dilworth would lead them to the Cornells, Lamb reopened a cramped field HQ, plugged in the phones, and waited for developments. He shared the office with one assistant agent, Jim Van, who was an almost too earnest and too dedicated 25-year-old. At the moment, Cliff Soames was in charge of the six-man team at the harbor, overseeing not only the NSA agents spotted throughout the area, but also coordinating the coverage of Garrison Dilworth with the harbor patrol and the Coast Guard. The shrewd old man apparently realized he was being followed, so Lem expected him to make a break, to try to shake surveillance long enough to place a call to the Cornells in private. The most logical way for Garrison to throw off his still. Hey! Arriba, bro. Banho que mata. Damn. Okay, nice, lads. Then I lost my thought. Where was I at? The most logical way for Garrison to throw off his tail was to head out to the sea, go up or down the coast, put ashore on a launch, and telephone Cornell before his pursuers could relocate him. But he would be surprised to find himself accompanied out of the harbor by the local patrol. Then at sea, he would be followed by a Coast Guard cutter standing by for that purpose. At 3:40, Cliff called to report that Dilworth and his lady friend were sitting on the deck of the Amazing Grace eating fruit and sipping wine, reminiscing a lot, laughing a little. From what we can pick up with directional microphones and from what we can see, I say they don't have any intention of going anywhere, except maybe to bed. They sure do seem to be Randy or Pear. Stay with them, Lem said. I don't trust them. Another call came through from the search team that had secretly entered Dilworth's house minutes after he had left. They had found nothing related to the Cornells or the dog. Dilworth's office had been carefully searched last night, and nothing had been found there either. Likewise, a study of his phone records did not produce a number for the Cornells. If he had called them in the past, he had always did so from a payphone. An examination of his AT&T credit card records records showed no such call. So if he had used a payphone, he had not billed it to himself, but had reversed the charges to the Cornells, leaving nothing to be traced, which was not a good sign. Obviously, Dilworth had been exceedingly cautious even before he had known he was being watched. Saturday, afraid the dog might be coming down with the cold, Travis